Wow, Bryn. Who am I to wish who am I to wish who am I to wish I wasn't just the way I am? Well, now we'll get another sermon. That was incredible. Laura's here, and I'm so excited. You know, a lot of times somebody will give a sermon, and they'll kind of ask the question, who are you? You know, who are you in the face of this? And who are you about that? And now Laura's going to ask us, who are we? All right. Thank you.
That was such a great way to intro my sermon. We didn't even talk about it. I didn't even finish writing it till this morning, so that was awesome. It's almost done. Nervous laughter. Okay. Well, hi, I'm Laura. I've been attending here at UUFM for a couple of years, and I'm going to share a little bit of something that I've reflected on since Katrina and I showed up here. Something that I noticed early on when I first started attending UUFM is that our chalice is not quite symmetrical. So that's what I'm going to preach about today. I really like the symbol. There's these ancient seeming elements of cup and flame combined in a way that would look quite at home in a modern art collection. It's lovely. It has meaning beyond its aesthetics, of course. But the aesthetics struck me. The cup and the flame themselves are a little off-center within the circle. And I keep thinking, well, that's perfect. Because let's face it, we are a little off-center, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. But we do tend to do things a little bit differently from your typical religious community around here. We have no shared creed or doctrine. There's no pastor at the helm steering this thing. And whether or not there's a higher power at work is open to discussion. We come from different beliefs and backgrounds, united in our conviction to sow and nurture compassion, peace, and justice. Speakers at our services include professors, city council members, farmers, poets, occasionally a minister, I guess. When you start describing a community like this, I'm sure some people in your life just get it, right? There are a lot of people out there who are verging on views of spirituality and community that are quite like what we have here. And I'm sure that some people look at you like you're maybe a little eccentric. How can that be a church? It's outside the typical picture of what most people imagine church to be, right? Maybe as you tell them, they just kind of tightly smile and nod, not really wanting to invite any further information. Maybe you've even been on the receiving end of some concern, right? Like, you sure you're not like in a cult? Well, to be abundantly clear, we are definitely not a cult. But eccentric might actually be a good word for what we are. The dictionary definition of eccentric is unconventional and slightly strange. Depending on who you ask, it can carry either a positive, somewhat whimsical connotation, or a diplomatically pejorative one. The word eccentric has its roots in early astronomy, actually. It was a technical term meant to describe something that did not have Earth at its center. Its roots are Greek, ek, meaning out of or off of, and kentros, center. So eccentric literally means off-center. As Unitarian Universalism coalesced from its various streams, I won't give you a history lesson today, and I'm not the best person to do that anyway. It was because of people who became convinced that the conventional way of looking at faith wasn't quite the best one, or necessarily able to cultivate the most good, or intellectually the most honest. And yes, even today, it is a rare and unusual thing, what we've built here. It's unusual to welcome many views, to sit together on Sunday morning as Catholics and atheists and Jews and pagans and everything else that we are. Even as I say that, some of you might have like a ripple of discomfort, right? And being reminded that this is who we are, right? Because we're all coming from such different backgrounds. But we have decided to break the bounds of those tribal divisions and form a new community where we make an effort to be a place that all can belong. Obviously, something draws us here. I mean, we might be a little off center, but certainly there's something that we can gather around, right? Otherwise, how does this even all work? So what is it exactly that holds us together? Well, last summer at the UUA General Assembly, UUs from all over gathered and voted to adopt new language and a new graphic to illuminate and illustrate that question. What is it that gathers us together? The core values of Unitarian Universalism were kind of put forth in this little like flower guy. You can see it on the back of your order of service. We actually have started printing it so that it can remind us of what exactly we're doing here. The shape, which is somewhat like a flower, there's also actually one that looks like an atom, right? It's kind of cool, but it's an aside. The shape declares what we're all about. All of these values, which hold us together as a community, are oriented around love as the center of who we are. Now, if I asked 25 people out here to define what love is, I would probably get 25 different answers, although they would likely echo each other in the essentials. Similarly, this is what we find when we turn to spiritual tradition to supply us with the meaning of love. And love is, in one way or another, the true center of most of our ancient and less ancient faiths. The Christian Bible's definition of love is found in 1 Corinthians. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. In Islam, the love for Allah is considered the highest form of love, emphasizing reverence and obedience. Love for fellow human beings is encouraged, encompassing kindness and compassion. Islamic teachings highlight the importance of love for the sake of Allah and the responsibility to treat others with fairness, justice, and mercy. Buddhism lifts up loving kindness, compassion, and awareness of our interconnectedness as love. Love is regarded as an attitude of genuine care, warmth, and goodwill toward all human beings and other beings. Buddhist teachings stress the cultivation of a love that wishes good and happiness for others with no strings attached. In Hinduism, love is often expressed through devotion and utter selflessness. Love is the unifying infinite force that unites us all with the divine, with creation, with each other, and permeates our whole universe. Judaism emphasizes the commandment to love God and one's neighbor. Love is a foundational relationship in building communities, and it involves acts of kindness and care for others. Love in Judaism is connected to the concept of covenant, right? Emphasizing a mutual relationship. And humanism also declares that reciprocal relationship and respect are keys to love. Love is empathy, compassion, the rejection of the exploitation of others, and acting in ways that promote the flourishing of all humanity instead of only oneself. And of course, each of us could add our own explanation of what love is, and it would be of equal weight and merit to everything that I just outlined. That's a very important part of our eccentricity, actually. And what all of these concepts share in common is that love is rooted in our innate human capacity to recognize our deep connectedness to one another and to cultivate social relationships that nurture and sustain us. And yes, part of love is the capacity to sacrifice what we want for the well-being of another. In fact, most spiritual thinkers and teachers reach the conclusion that decentering our ego is key on the path to finding out what true life is. Decentering ourselves means setting aside egoism and letting love guide our thoughts and actions instead. This is tricky because our ego permeates our awareness of every moment of our lives. So, yeah, tricky. It's kind of hard to set that aside. And an eccentric community isn't always the idyllic picture of graceful utopia. It's glorious, but gnarly. We step on one another's toes, we offend each other, annoy each other, disagree, and that is when the real work begins. We as UUFM actually have a beautiful covenant that was written by some of our founding members. That's a guide for us in that work. Also in your order of service, take a look. But no, if you take a look now, you're gonna miss like the rest of this, so. Even with a shared agreement of how we center love in our fellowship, decentering ourselves is not always easy. It does not tend to come naturally. So how do we decenter ourselves? It's a big question. And honestly, I'm not going to answer it in an extensive matter right now. I've already bitten off a lot with the whole like definition of love thing. So there's that. I actually think that most of what we do here speaks to answering that question in some way. What I will say is one path to decentering is by accessing our observing self. The observing self refers to the part of you that is aware of your thoughts, your feelings, without getting caught up in them or judging them. It's a key aspect of mindfulness. For me, it's a really key aspect of my work as a therapist. It's a non-judgmental awareness of your internal experiences, like a quiet and curious observer, watching your thoughts, assumptions, and feelings come and go with compassion, but not without putting too much stock in them. It's the part of you that has always been present, stable, and consistent. This is the part of us that can reflect on a situation with self-awareness and notice how our patterns, behaviors, and emotions are impacting how we're showing up. It's our ability to zoom out and see a situation for what it is. And it can be very hard work in any given moment to set aside our automatic reactions, take a deep breath, and see things from our observing self's perspective. It gets easier with practice, I've heard. The point of all of this observing self stuff is that it helps us to be more purposeful about centering love in all that we do. When you access your observing self, it's like pressing pause on a moment and deciding with intention how you want to move forward instead of letting yourself be on autopilot. And then you can ask yourself that all-important question: what do I want to do here? And for us, as UUs who have declared that we're centered on love in some way, our question is, what will move me toward love? What will move us toward more love in this situation? Does this move me toward love? Or does this move me away from love? And really digging deep into that question. Love is never a place that we're going to fully arrive at. So I like to think of this question as less of a map and more of a compass. When we look to our compass as love, it can kind of reorient us to where we're supposed to be going. And love is a thorny business sometimes, of course. Making love our center means doing things differently than our culture teaches us to. It means being the crooked tree. It means setting aside our self-preservation instinct and picking up something better. Setting aside revenge to pick up healing. Setting aside greed and consumption to pick up interdependence, setting aside certainty to pick up wonder and non-judgment, setting aside comfort to pick up courage. Love ultimately means decentering ourselves for the sake of deep goodness that goes beyond ourselves. And ultimately, that ends up being for our own good too. That's the truth in being interconnected. If we really believe that this is the better way to live, then our capacity for eccentricity is a gift. When I say I am eccentric, I'm saying I am off-center. I have taken myself off of the center, and we is on center. Now, I'm not trying to sound like an Abbott and Costello sketch there, okay? But we on center is really what we can be all about if we've centered love. I don't mean by that I neglect myself when I take myself off of the center, or I abuse myself in any way, because in fact, if we are all interconnected, then my self-neglect is my neglect of you. And your suffering, in turn, is my suffering. And as we help each other along the path, we help ourselves. That's what it means to be interdependent. I don't know if I thought about like offering my own thoughts about what love is and adding them to, all of these wonderful, beautiful, ancient traditions. I haven't really gotten there yet of like my final definition. I'll let you know in a few years. But I think that love really comes back to belonging. It's this belonging without control. Not belonging like ownership, but belonging like family. I belong to you, and you belong to me, in a way that is free of control, but full of care. Love means that I fit in, I am seen, and I can trust you to care for me well. And I am trusted to do the same for you. If being off-center means centering that in our lives, I think that we're in pretty good shape. If that's what we're using as our compass, I really believe in the capacity of this community to do really beautiful things, not only in the lives of one another, but in McMinnville as a whole. For people who are looking to put their faith in something, but don't quite know where to go, who might feel that their views are a little bit eccentric for typical congregations, I think this is a wonderful place to start the process of that. I know that looks really different for each of us, and this little 15-minute sermon is by no means the beginning or the end of our conversations about this. I know that many of you have been thinking about this for a long time and have great wisdom, and that's kind of what our Q&A is for, right? But I'm happy to bring a little bit of a reflection on what it means to be eccentric, and why I have loved seeing us here as a community and individuals embrace that so deeply. I'm going to lead us into a time for meditation now. It's a brief reflection on kind of what we've just heard and what's stirring in you. So I'll ring our singing bell, and in a couple of minutes, I'll ring it again to call us back. Singing bowl. Sounds like a bell.